Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Mercy Marriage. This is our last one. We're wrapping it up for Wednesday nights. I hope you've been enjoying them. Man, it's good to have you in the house. Everyone thought out? Good to go? Yeah? Good. So we've got a little bit of a video that I want you to watch tonight that's really going to help us kind of move into what we're going to do tonight. Tonight we're going to have a panel with the elders, and we're just going to get different perspectives of what's gone on in their marriages and their relationships. And what I love about this video that we're about to watch is it kind of is the experience of what we've been through and what we're sharing from. It's learning from going from the me seat to the we seat. And so really tonight, the panel that we're setting up is just going to kind of talk around how we as couples have done our best to come out of that me seat and into the we seat. And so that's kind of where we're headed tonight. You got the video rolling? All right, let's do it. Sit back, take some notes, enjoy.
Sex and friendship are like two wings on the same bird. And your marriage cannot soar unless it has both. It takes both. And the deeper you grow in that intimacy, that friendship with each other, then also the deeper you're gonna grow in the sexual aspect of your relationship. The sexual part of your relationship, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not just an act. God intended it to be this spiritual, this emotional, this physical connecting, this binding together as one. And we see this all the way back at the very, very beginning with God's original intent for marriage. In Genesis chapter 2, he paints this picture for us.
That's right. He talks about Adam and Eve being naked and unashamed. And it's just this beautiful picture of a husband and a wife having no secrets from each other, right? And they're physically naked, so there's the sexual component there, but there's also no secrets and there's no shame involved, and there's this beautiful friendship between each other.
And that's still what God intends today. You know, that verse in Genesis chapter 2 that says the man and his wife were naked and without shame. In that one verse, you see both sex and friendship. You know, the physical nakedness obviously representing the sexual intimacy in a marriage. But also nakedness in the Bible represents transparency. It represents trust and vulnerability. It represents not wearing any masks. And they were without shame, which shows the acceptance that they had for one another. The love and the trust and the adoration. That's the friendship part. From the very beginning, this was God's design. And we're convinced that the best marriages are between best friends.
That's right.
And if you want to have a better marriage, invest in your friendship with your spouse. And here's the part we don't talk about enough. If you want to have a better sex life, invest in your friendship with your spouse. And in just kind of a very basic way, we want to illustrate what that looks like with this furniture on the stage. Because the way that we see it, there are three main dynamics or postures that a marriage can be in. And the first is when both of you are sitting here together on what we call the love seat. All right, and the love seat isn't just the physical love seat. Love seat represents where love lives. It's where you're connected together. It's where you're unified, where you're serving each other's needs. And it's the place where God wants your marriage to live.
Exactly. Like right here, we are having total transparency and honesty, and that vulnerability of having what we like to refer to as is a naked marriage, where you are naked in every way emotionally, that you're bearing all to one another and trusting each other with that knowledge of whatever it is that you're telling each other. And you're making decisions in a unified fashion, that you're doing everything together. And so this is, you know, we want, as a marriage, God wants us to stay in this love seat. He wants us to have a love seat kind of marriage where we're doing everything together and making all of our decisions together and truly loving one another and serving one another.
Yeah, and then in the actual love seat, there are other things you can do too. You know, it doesn't have to just happen in a bed. I'm just saying, like there's a lot that can happen on a love seat, including cuddling. All right, you know, I think I'm the cuddler in the family. And so whenever I get close to Ashley, like I want to just throw my leg on her. I just want to wrap her up in this cocoon of love.
He does.
And just like hold her tight. And I have cuddle needs. You know, sometimes I'll say like, look, I'll give you all the sex you want. Just hold me. It's true. I just need to be held. I know, I have needs. Just hold me and tell me it's going to be okay. In fact, out in the XO shop, there's a shirt that says Extreme Cuddler, and it was only for women, which I was deeply offended by. Because
he was offended.
That's my love language.
It's true. Okay, how many of you are non-cuddlers? Raise your hands high, because I'm a non-cuddler. And I know you're resistant. It's okay. We can admit this.
No, God rarely puts two cuddlers in the same marriage because they wouldn't do anything else. You'd get nothing done.
That's true.
And so.
But it's not that I don't. I love to cuddle with Dave in small doses. But when I go to bed.
You are such a liar.
Like, okay.
In front of all these people, in front of God, and all these simulcasts.
Like,
you need to repent right now. Honesty is a big part of this. No, you do.
I will meet those cuddle needs, right? I will try to meet his cuddle needs. But when I go to bed at night, and maybe for a lot of you non-cuddlers, this is kind of the same situation. When I go to bed, I just want to have some space and I don't want to be hot, okay? Like Dr. Oz. Okay, yes, let's clap for that. Let's clap for some peaceful sleep, right?
All you clappers need to repent. Need to repent right now.
But we want some peaceful sleep because honestly, peaceful sleep will do wonders for your marriage, right? But it's, I get so hot, and Dr. Oz himself says that you should not be hot when you sleep, and he feels like he's a filthy liar.
Dr. Oz, you are a wretched, filthy man. It has ruined my marriage. No, I'm sure you're a very fine person.
Oh, goodness. No, but we are fans of the couch for many reasons, and the love seat.
The love seat. It's where you're together. But there's another dynamic, and that's where you both end up in these individual chairs, okay? These are the me seats. This is where a marriage gets when both people are doing their own thing. It's not about ours anymore. It's about his and hers. My time, my career, my hobbies, my pursuits. And you kind of start drifting apart. Like if we were accurately illustrating it, when you're in the me seat, there'd be wheels on these seats and you'd be slowly drifting further away. And you might come back together in that love seat, but it's only for practical purposes for partnership. Well, we've got to come together to do things with the kids, or maybe we come together for the physical act of sex, but then we retreat back to our own seats. And sometimes you're in the same room, but you're in completely different worlds. You're on two different phones looking at two different things, and you're just wrapped up in two different worlds. And both of you can subtly blame the other person for the reason why you're not in the love seat anymore.
It's so true. And I think this is a very easy place to live in a marriage. I think so many marriages are living in the his and her seats. And they're kind of, like Dave said, they may go to the love seat for certain things. Maybe they go and have sex and they're in the love seat for that, but then really in every other way, emotionally, they're completely disconnected. And we're just missing out on really the best part of marriage. We're missing out on that beautiful connection that God wants us to have with one another. But we live in a culture that says, you really can't trust anybody. You really can't, not even your spouse. You need to kind of have an exit strategy because it's not going to work. And so we kind of harbor this in our hearts, and it makes us miles apart, and it makes us think, well, I can take care of all these things myself. I might go to the love seat for maybe a few things. Maybe we parent together, but in every other way, I'm going to stay in my seat. And there's no room. There's no room for your spouse in this seat, right? It's just you. And that's just no way to live.
It's not. And then there's one other dynamic in marriage, and this one can be the most difficult and the most heartbreaking of all. And it's where one spouse is in the love seat and one spouse is in his or her own chair. There's one spouse that's saying, I'm willing to do everything I can for my marriage. God, I'm praying for my spouse. I'm praying for my marriage. I'm trying to serve them. I'm trying to do everything right. And yet I feel like I'm in this marriage alone. I might physically be sitting next to that person right now, but it's as if they're miles away. And that can be the most heartbreaking scenario of all.
It is, because you might be sitting here right now and you're wondering, well, where are we? Are we in the love seat? Are we in the his and her seats? Or is one of us in the love seat and one of us in the his and her seats? And as you think about this, if you feel like you are that spouse that's in the love seat and you're reading all the marriage books, you're the one who drug your spouse to this conference, okay? I just want to tell you, and there are some of you in this room, I know that that's maybe where you are, but there is hope for you. And we're going to kind of unpack this more in our talk today, but there is hope for you. And I'm so glad that you're here. And this is one step in the right direction. This is one step getting closer to that love seat together.
And so how do you get back to this place in a way that helps your sex life, obviously, but enhances the intimacy in every part of your life? Because intimacy isn't just physical. It isn't just sexual. It connects on all levels. And the Bible gives us a roadmap for this. And so there are a few things specifically we're called to do. The first one, if you want to have an absolute passionate, intimate connection with your spouse, if you want the naked marriage that we've been talking about, I think the very first thing you have to commit to is total and complete honesty. Honesty, transparency, that's a picture of nakedness. And you have to get naked emotionally. You have to get naked emotionally before you can really get fully naked physically the way God intended. Or else sex is just going to be an act. It's just going to be mechanical when God wants you to connect on such a deeper level. And so the depth of your honesty with each other will ultimately determine the depth of your intimacy with each other. Those two things are inextricably interconnected. You can't have secrets and intimacy at the same time in a marriage. And then it bled over into our marriage. After we were married about a year, I fell back into it, and now I understood what Jesus taught about lusting after someone being an act of infidelity of the heart. And he's called us not only to physical monogamy, but mental monogamy. And anytime we're fantasizing about someone other than our spouse, we are opening the door for pure evil into our marriage. It's going to sabotage not only our sex life, but it's going to sabotage our mind, our heart, and every other part of our marriage. And we in the church, we men who claim to be Christian, we've got to lead the way of just saying there is no place for this. And there's a growing number of women too that are getting into pornography. Some couples watch it together. They say it's no big deal. It's entertainment. We've got to call it what it is, which is a sin. We've got to call it a sin, and we've got to get it out of our lives. There's no place for it in our marriages. And if this is an issue for you, then you need to confess it. I think maybe one of the most awkward but important conversations you could have as a result of this weekend is to look your spouse in the eye and say, I've been looking at pornography.
Right.
And I want to repent of that. I want to confess to that. I want to get accountability in place. And I want to do whatever I can do to rebuild your trust and to get this out of our life. If it's something that you're doing together, you need to repent together to God and say, we're going to get this out of our lives.
And so if your spouse comes to you after this conference and says, I've been looking at porn or whatever it is they confess, please resist the urge to go into those his and her seats. Please lean in and deal with this in the love seat together.
That's right. And get rid of it, because porn itself, one final thing on it, what it does is it puts you back in the me seat.
Yep.
It makes sex all about me.
It does, yeah.
My needs, my desires, my gratification. It totally removes your spouse from the equation, and it puts you over here where you're like, I'm just going to take care of my own needs. And any time that you're over that me seat, you're sabotaging your marriage.
I just feel like we live in a culture where, we see everybody's highlight reels on social media and on TV. We see like the best, right? We see airbrush things in magazines. And so then we look at ourselves and we think, oh my goodness, I'm less than, I'm not good enough. And it just really wreaks havoc on our sex life, because if you're not feeling beautiful, if you're not feeling pretty, it's really hard to get in the romantic mood. And so guys, you have such power here with your wife.
Yes.
In some ways that you can really help her out in this is just calling out her beauty, not only physically, but all the other things, her heart, what's beautiful inside and out, and tell her that you are fascinated by her, that you are so glad that you married her, and that she's not your old lady or your ball and chain. Like, I hate those comments.
You're never having sex again.
You're not.
If
You're
you
like
start
not doing it, okay?
Talking to her that way.
It is so bad, okay? And like things like, guys, if you struggle with seeing the pretty woman running past you in the neighborhood, that's gonna kill your wife's heart. That breaks her heart every time you do that. So watch where your eyes go. And guys, things like porn, like we just talked about, that breaks her heart. That makes her feel like she's not good enough. That makes her feel like she's not attractive enough. And so really build her up in that way.
Yeah, so true, guys. And one final one for you guys. Every man, just men, every man stand up. Every man. All right. Now, these are the guys that, for all of these, there's a bunch we haven't talked about. Things that can really affect your sex life. Exhaustion, depression, anxiety, financial stress, things that all of us deal with. But this represents the approximate percentage of men in this room who, despite all of that baggage and all of that exhaustion, are still really hoping to have sex tonight, right? So you guys can sit down.
And women too, yeah.
And so I want to invite up our panel tonight. Isaiah Andrews and Jenna, come on up here if you would. Tim and Lynette Erickson, come on up here if you would. And Jason and Kelly Gorman, come on up. Give these guys a hand. They're gonna tell it to you tonight. Take a seat wherever, grab a microphone, click it on if you would. And I'm going to ask you how long you've all been married. That's your first question. That's a tough one. Jamie, how long have you been married to your husband?
15 years.
Wow. Has it been good 15 years?
Yes, it has.
Good. We can start right here. How long have you guys been married? Jason and Kelly Gorman.
20 years.
20 years. You oldies. Look at this.
They're debating how long they've been married.
When do we start doing that?
Take my boots off.
How long you been married, Ericksons? Tim and Lynette Erickson.
15 years, 14, 15 years.
Somewhere in there, Tomato.
Yeah.
We've
Andrews.
been married 5 years.
5 years. So we got some variety in the house, and we're going to talk about what it looks like to go from the me seat into the we seat, and kind of some of these questions kind of talk about how we've learned to navigate that kind of stuff. Every one of us have started off in places that we're probably not proud of, and I'm going to challenge you to go there tonight. And we're going to have kind of a naked panel tonight. I didn't tell you that, but that's the plan. Anybody want to share anything before we get started? Just anything you've thought of as far as or Mercy Marriage has gone, or anything throughout this series? Anything on your mind that you want to share before the questions get rolled out? I put them on the spot, and I don't tell them I'm going to do this. You get mad at me? It makes me think of a couple one time. I think they had their 50th anniversary, and when they were going through the party and everyone was talking, they had the man get a microphone, and he stood up and he said,
Well, over all these years, I've found her to be tried and true.
and she stand up and said, well, I'm tired of you too. Sometimes it can get hard going through all those years.
One thing for us that I think you shared on the first night was about expectations and what you expect and how to have communication around that. And just in the little things about like expectations for the night. You know, he planned a date night a couple of weeks ago for us. And so as we left, he's like, okay, what are your expectations for the night? And we had two totally different ideas of how the night was going to go.
Wow.
He was going to go to a nicer, more expensive restaurant. I was like, well, let's save money and go somewhere less expensive. You know, and it was just funny how in our own minds, like I played out what the whole night would look like. And we were on different pages. And so just having those little conversations has really helped just plans go better.
Wow.
And, you know, making sure that we're on the same page with the little things even.
That's awesome, because you think after 20 years you'd be on the exact same page. I mean, that's just duh, why wouldn't we be? So cool. Good job, way to put it to work. Yeah, you know.
I'd have to say one thing with us here during the Mercy Marriage was the fact that we've been able to have reflection from the first years of our marriage to where we're at today. And we've had actually open discussions at home about where we are at and where we're at now, and just what this Mercy Marriage has basically refreshed us on. Just that reflection.
That's
It's been
good.
pretty good.
Very cool.
For us, I would say like the transparency aspect. Like we went home and I was like, I feel like we're transparent. He's like, but are we? I was like, well, geez, like now you're making me question it. But it was like even the smallest details to like, what am I dealing with mentally in this day or in this season on this day? Like, what am I struggling with? And I'll just hold it to myself and not tell him, because I'll be like, well, it's repetitive or it's nothing you can really help me with, so I might as well not tell him. But it was like, even knowing that he wanted to know that, even if it was repetitive, even if it's something he couldn't help me with, he still wanted to know what I was dealing with. And it was like, oh, I guess that's an aspect of transparency also.
Wow, that's really good. I mean, that just reminds me of the we seat, like those things that we just want to win on our own, or those things that, you know what, I'm just gonna battle this. I'm just gonna take care of this. But we don't realize that we're stronger when we bring them into those battles, into those thoughts even, into the things we're just thinking about throughout the day, or just like you said, those mental struggles. We're stronger together. That's great.
I would say, kind of like what you mentioned, it doesn't matter if you're married for 20 years or just because we're Christians or just because we love each other, just because we've worked through some really hard things. I feel like marriage is going to be a work in progress for the rest of our life, and it's always going to be something that we can improve on, always going to be something that can get better if we decide to do that. And so when we have a marriage conference again, to come, to read books about marriage and to keep investing into your marriage, no matter how long you've been married or how well you think you're doing.
Yeah, that's good. You want to be the best at it, right? You don't ever just want to tolerate your marriage. You want to be the best at it. Anything you've ever wanted to be the best at in life, you get all the knowledge you can about it, because that's how I'm going to be the best, is get the basics and work them. And so I love that thought. We don't ever want to just get stagnant, like, well, it's working. No, let's have the best. When Jamie and I first got married, our vision together was we wanted our marriage to be a ministry. Whatever we did, we knew we want our marriage to impact people. Not even a ministry in church, not even what we're doing right now. Just whoever's around us and sees us, we want it to impact them. And it really held us accountable to how we treated one another, because we weren't just going to be a couple. We wanted to impact people with the way we were together. And so it really held us accountable in areas where we wanted to be whiny and rude and just let things just happen. No, we're going to have a ministry with our marriage. And so, all right, I'm going to ask you guys some questions. I'll start with you, Gormans, right off the bat. What are two things that you've implemented in your marriage that you can say have made your marriage better? They've made it better. And what are the changes that you saw from that? 2 things that you've implemented in your marriage that have made it better.
One thing definitely is following like Financial Peace and Dave Ramsey's plan for managing money. You know, they say that money fights and conflict about money are the #1 cause of divorce in America. And so if you guys can get on the same page with that and kind of button that hole up, I think that changed our marriage quite a bit. Like, and when we started planning and dreaming about those kinds of things, like I had one idea maybe on what we were going to save money for, and he had another. But when you sat down and talk about them and get on the same plan together and start working towards you're making progress on something that is important to both of you, like that really helped our marriage quite a bit, I would say.
Wow. Isn't it interesting how it pulls you together as a couple? Like, I think for a lot of couples, it might be one of the first times they ever felt like teamwork. Like, wow, we're a team in this, and starting to feel that teamwork dynamic. That's good. And so what you saw? Is that kind of the change that you saw as you guys both going the same direction?
Yeah, I think so for sure. We just had a plan that we were both working for, and realizing that the plan's not always going to go as you want it to, and being okay with that. And that's kind of been work over the years. Like the initial plan and how we do it is great, and we're all energized and stuff. And over the years, that's kind of been, you know, the times where we were more committed to it and less committed, and where we varied a little bit. But I think the more that we worked towards that goal, then we definitely saw more success in that area, obviously.
Wow.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, it takes time. It's not a race, it's a marathon to get there. And so to really see where we've come from and to look at our bank account now, is like we did this together. And so just to understand that the blocks are way back there and you got to go all the way there. But
yeah,
that's what was really cool about it.
Wow. And it's kind of cool because when you start to give up those little selfish purchases that you would usually make, it's like, I'm investing into us. Like, did you feel that? Like those little, like I remember I would stop at, every time I stopped at a gas station, it was a Mountain Dew and a Snickers, every time. And when I started to realize how much that actually added up, it was like, when I say no to that stuff, I'm investing into this. That's good. All right, Erickson's, same question. 2 things that you've implemented in your marriage that you feel you've seen a difference from, and what was that difference?
Well, we kind of reflected on this, and I think the main thing that we put into our marriage was God. You know, we were married by the covenant, and, you know, we made a commitment to God when we got married. But, you know, the more we discussed it, it was like at that time, we really probably didn't understand what that meant, you know. And so when we went and we invested God into our marriage, and we started reflecting on, this is his daughter, I'm his son, and when we started implementing that, then that was the greatest change in us, with respect, with understanding what it really meant to us. You know, and it took a few years. It really wasn't something that just flipped a switch. But I really believe when we made that commitment to God, we didn't understand the true meaning of it, I guess. And really, that's the biggest thing we've implemented.
Wow.
But yeah, we did Dave Ramsey too, thanks.
Lynette, do you got anything on that?
I just know, yeah, we implemented God, but I don't know how to get it out. I don't know. I just truly commend Tim for the sacrifices and the moves that he made towards God for our family. I know back in the day, I think this changed my whole way that I looked at Tim. I looked at our marriage and our family together, was when he did a 21-day fast, and he truly only drank water for 21 days. And it scared me at first, because I was like, you can't do this. But he just assured me that as sure as God told him to do this, if he was to stop, that he would stop. But he went the full 21 days with only water, and it was so humbling. And the guy never complained one time, and our going out was always after church on Sunday, and he would still take us out to eat, and he would sit there and drink his water and not complain. And the peace, I can't even describe the peace that came over our whole home and our family from him doing that. And I just feel like it's been building blocks ever since, that it really set God into our home for the sacrifice that he did. And I know he was calling for God to come upon our marriage and our home the whole time during that fast. So I don't know, in my eyes, that's what started it all.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. So if you want to change your marriage, man, it's 21 days, only water. No complaining. That's awesome. You know, the scripture says this: when you draw near to him, he'll draw near to you. And that's a drawing. Like, God, I'm not satisfied with what we have going on. I need you in this marriage. And put your foot down and let him show up in the middle of that. That's awesome. All right, Andrew, same question. What's 2 things you've implemented in your marriage that you can say have made it better?
One of them would be, is this what you're saying? Because this is what I'm hearing. We would fight, and I would be completely mad. And he's like, that's not even what I'm saying. Like, well, that's what I'm hearing. And so it's like, now we try to catch it before it gets to that point where it's like, okay, is this what you're saying? Because you're making me mad. And he'll be like, that's not all what I'm saying. Okay, then you need to figure out a way to rephrase it. So that's not how I'm receiving it, because you're not explaining it, or vice versa. It goes both ways, and it's helped us a lot to not go from 0 to 10 really fast.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, another thing that we implemented as well is never having like deep conversations or conflict resolution in front of our kids, just so that they never see us in division, where it's like mom and dad are always on the same page. So we'll go, hey, I need to talk to you seriously, so let's go in the room and have a conversation, versus trying to have it in the midst of the chaos and things of that nature. And so that's been huge. But even on the point that she made, for me, and maybe this is for men as well, reveal your heart before you have the conversation. Like, I'll come to her and say, my intention is not to hurt you or to put you down or to make you angry, but I just need to talk to you about something. So it's like my heart is before me before we have the conversation, so she doesn't have to navigate going, are you trying to jab at me? Are you trying to say something that's going to offend me? And it's like, no, that's not my intention. So
I love that. That's so fair. That is so fair. Just set that thing up. Here's where I'm at.
Or he'll ask me if I'm ready to receive something. Like, I have to tell you something. You're in a place to receive it? Like, no. Okay, I'll come back to you in a little bit. I'm like, well, thanks. Like, I'm not in a place right now.
Let me run to Starbucks, and on the way back, I will be ready.
Go to Starbucks and Target, and we'll talk then.
That's great. Jamie, what you got?
I wrote down boundaries and encouragement. And so we've talked a little bit about boundaries over the last few weeks, just some of our boundaries, but it's just an area where we don't go, and they're communicated, so we know that we're not going there. Boundaries with our kids, boundaries with our words, things like that. So boundaries for sure, one. And then the second one is encouragement. And just from the very beginning, when we got married, we just told each other, like, we're going to encourage each other. And so we try to find it in the little things and in the big things. And then I feel like with a foundation of encouragement, when a hard conversation has to come, it's a lot easier to receive, and it's also a lot easier to give or to have that conversation, because I really know that he is for my good, and it's because he's encouraged me in those areas, and he might just see some blind spots or some tweaks that I need to make in that area.
Yeah, that's good. We spent a lot of time encouraging, and I would challenge you with the same thing. I'd challenge you with this: find something every single day you can say that's encouraging. And it's not just to say something, it's because it changes what you look for. Like before that, it almost felt like I was looking for flaws. It's like it gave me a one-up if I could find chinks in her armor. But when I turned to always trying to find something to encourage, every day I was looking for encouragements, because I wanted to find something I could say, hey, I really like this about you, or you're doing this really well. And it created gratitude. in us. And so I would challenge you with that same thing. That's probably one of the most powerful things we did. We did that when we were dating. We're going to always encourage each other, where people would be like, would you guys just shut up, please? It's like, oh, I love you. Oh, you're so pretty. Oh, But it works. It works. It's so powerful. Well, you guys stole mine. Mine was budget. Thanks a lot. And questioning, is this what I hear you saying? That wasn't my expectation for tonight. Just kidding. Yeah, mine was budget as well. That totally rocked my world. I had no vision for my money for the future. All my money that I made, I would spend right now because there's another check coming, and there was no future. And I remember that being so eye-opening, like, what am I doing? Like, I was the guy that would get a paycheck and then go walk around Walmart just to see if there was anything I couldn't live without. Like, I got it, might as well spend it, and there was no vision for my future. And Dave Ramsey says this, your money problem is the one you see in the mirror. And when I finally was able to swallow that and go, it is me, then I could start to put some discipline to the problems that I'd created financially. And so getting on a budget was huge.
Just out of curiosity, I'm sure most of you have heard of Dave Ramsey, but how many of you have gone through Financial Peace University?
Very
So
cool.
quite a few. About half. Cool. Okay.
So y'all know what we're talking about when we talk about the budget being the bad guy. How cool is that? The fight's not here anymore. It's with the budget. Man, the budget's the bad guy. That's the one that says no. Right? If you let the budget say no long enough, soon it'll start to say yes. Isn't that cool? Can I buy a boat? Yep. Can we give a house away? Yep. Right? Because we chose to do some things, right? And so, yeah, and then questioning, is this what I hear you saying? I love that. That's been a huge deal for me. Like, I hear this. Is that what you're saying? Not at all. Okay. Well, then either I'm hearing wrong or I need to check something going on. But that has been a big deal. Do I hear you saying this? Because, like we learned a couple weeks ago, we hear through our greatest need, right? And so what we're hearing is it's filtered through that greatest need. And if we don't hear love or we don't hear respect, then all of a sudden it gets twisted to something that's a fight about to happen or demeaning or taking me down. And so big stuff. All right, question number 2, you ready? Oh, he's ready. How has your communication changed through the years? 20 years. Through 20. She's going to take yours, bro. Oh, okay. Hey, you communicated this.
We did communicate about it. When we first got married, we went to, we did a pre-counseling session, a couple sessions, and they did a test and an inventory. And we scored so high on communication. The guy said he'd never had another couple score as high on communication.
Serious?
And it was back in the day. We lived in a small town. We hung out all day, every day. We just talked all the time, and it was amazing. And we thought, oh, this is great because, we'll never fight because we always communicate about everything. And then, so we got married and had a couple kids and moved to a new community and, started our jobs and, slowly realized we just weren't communicating. We were kind of existing together, that everything, with the busyness of life and having children and a house and all those things, that we had just kind of drifted apart and woke up one day in a really unhealthy position. And we were 5 years in approximately and realized we don't even know each other anymore. I was working day shift, he was working evening shift. So he'd get off at midnight and go to work at 4 just as I'm coming home. And so I'm rushing, home, and he's rushing out the door, and realized this had been going on for years. And we were just not on the same page with life, with kids, with our faith. I mean, we're just off our boat.
Wow.
And so just kind of one day it was oh my gosh, where are we? What's going on? What are we going to do to get back to where we were? And so that was a big moment. That was a big fight that day about oh my gosh, we don't even know each other at this point. And there was a lot of work that went into making communication a priority again. And it is now. You have to stay communicating about the little things, about the big things. Because if you communicate about the little things, when you've got that foundation and the big things come, you're going to be able to work through them.
Right. So do you feel like the test score kind of did you in because you rode that for so long?
No, I don't think so. I think we were jokingly took pride in it. We did talk about everything all the time. And so, we kind of joke about that. But no, I don't think.
Yeah.
that really had that much impact.
I could just see myself being totally deceived by that. Like, well, we got 100, so we're good. It must be all right. Wow. Yeah, we're good. Like, we're masters at this.
We got it covered.
So you feel like you kind of came to a place where you didn't even know each other, and that was kind of the wake-up call. Like, what are we doing? Wow. Can you give me a couple steps that kind of got you moving in that direction? Like, what after that big fight? What's the thing that was like? Because you probably almost kind of feel alone in that place where it's like we don't even know where to start, but we've got to do something.
We both very much, I think, felt alone for different reasons. Like, honestly, we went to counseling. We reached out to our pastor and be like, this is where we're at. And that was probably the first time that we had been transparent with anybody about where we were.
Wow.
We were in a place where we were so convinced that we needed to make sure that people thought we had a good marriage that we didn't care as much about what was going on behind the scenes and the actualness of our marriage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
We were putting on like this facade that everything was fine because we were so unwilling to be naked and to reveal the truth.
Wow.
And then one day woke up with addictions in our lives that we didn't even know that each other had. We hadn't been spending time together, and then realized like, wow, this is not what we envisioned 5 years into marriage.
Wow. That's huge. I've heard someone say it like this: don't use the strength God's given you to try and change your spouse. That strength is to change you. And it's so crazy, like the amount of energy and strength you put into having a fake-looking marriage, you could be using that strength to work on what's behind the scenes. But here we're putting all this energy into making it look good, and it's crumbling. And that energy needs to go, like you said, toward what's really happening behind the scenes. And then you don't have to put on a show on the front. It's just you. It's like, this is just us. Do you feel like you're there today where it's like kind of what you see is what you get? Like,
We're pretty real.
are you still pretty
transparent.
fake? No, just kidding. Are you really faking it right now?
No, I think we're definitely 100 times better than where we were then. It was that fear of failure. I mean, we were young, we were naive, and just was like, wow, we're not in a good spot, but we're not going to go tell people that this is awful and not good.
Yeah.
So just smiled and made it look nice on the outside.
Wow. I'm trying not to move on too fast because I feel like there's probably even people in this room that are right there. And I believe there's a lot of couples that are right there because just like you said, you get married, next thing you know, you're 3 years into it, life's cruising, everything's cruising. This was supposed to be good, and it's not, but I'm just trying to ignore that. And then you come to this place where it's like, where in the world are we? And it happens that quick. And so if you're in here tonight, there's people that have been through that. And we're creating a culture and a community where you don't have to hide that. I mean, I would challenge you to come talk to these two right here if you're in that spot right now. And that's the whole point, is we've gone through it and we want to tell you how we won. We want you to take it and make it better and give it away to somebody else because it happens that fast. And so, yeah, that fear of failure, like this was the thing we didn't want to fail at, but here we are. So that's powerful.
I mean, and even to be more vulnerable, it was a bathroom conversation sitting in our bathroom where I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. And you need to leave, and I'll stay with the kids until we can figure this out, but it's not. I'm just done. And that conversation ended up being a long day, but it's really what broke, because I was ready to walk. And it broke, and all the change occurred from that conversation.
Wow. And you know what's amazing? You think that in those moments right there is where God leaves because you've failed, but that's where he shows up.
He did. He called his pastor friend and said, like, I need to come talk to you today because I'm not leaving. And like, I was so convinced that that's what he needed to do, was leave. And if he would not have gone and met with his friend who was a pastor, like I just would have been done for that day.
Wow.
So have people in your life. Like, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Have people in your life you can talk to that you trust. And even if you don't know people like that right now, reach out to somebody.
Yeah.
Don't throw it away because you're afraid.
Yeah. And we just open ourselves up to that in this room tonight for anybody. You have any thoughts on that? Man, thank you for going there. That's so powerful.
Yeah, I think the only thing for Kelly and I both is we're fighters, and just sitting here, listening to what she was saying. I think that's what came out was the fight. Like, we got to fight this, and that's where I was at. I was at that point where I got to do anything and everything to crawl back into this, and so I did. I put my gloves on and fought it, and we're champs.
Wow.
So, but yeah, the fight.
That's good. Erickson's, how has your communication changed through the years? And give me an example.
Well, we both come from previous marriages. When we got married, Lynette had 2 kids that then was in our family, and I had one in Montana. But I know with my marriage, the communication, the first marriage was not there. You know, you fight and you fight and you fight trying to keep it, and finally it's just like, okay, I can't put myself through this or my daughter at the time through this anymore because it's not fair to her. And of course you look back on those situations and, you know, think you would have done something different. But when we got together, I never thought there was anything wrong with our communication, really. I mean, there were some days I came home and it was like, hey, honey, I'm home. You know, there's a coffee cup or something like that, you know. I got cat-like skills.
Cat-like skills.
And you got to wonder sometimes, it's like, she's just letting me know that
she loves me.
She loves me. But communication was rough, you know. You get that pride in you, and I think both of us have some of that. And it's just like you want to bow up at one another, and it's like, what'd you say, you know? You're not going to put me down like that. But the communication aspect of it was a time for us. It was an overtime period that improved, and what really did that was church. By especially you and Miss Jamie with your marriage, we sat in your living room and listened to so much wisdom, you know. And what was this, 5 years ago? You know, that's just even 5 years ago. And we sat in your living room and we listened to wisdom, and we listened to other couples, and we start implementing this stuff in our life, and we start recognizing that, again, what you guys preach about is what she's telling me isn't out to hurt me. What she's telling me is just something that she sees that maybe somebody else sees too, that I'm blinded by.
Right.
And even though that hurts, you got to swallow that pride, and you got to understand that, you know, I can't see everything that I do. I know most of the things that I think in my mind don't come out my mouth the way the words are supposed to come out.
Right.
You know, and that's real big for me. But I just think implementing that peacefulness and being calm with one another, and, you know, putting some locks on the cupboard doors and stuff like that really helped us out. But
Lynette, please share. Were you serving him coffee? Is that on the go? Coffee on the fly.
To think back on it, you know, again, the way we were raised and whatever, my mom was a yeller, so I was a yeller, and like, you don't think that there's anything wrong with the way that you're communicating. You think that that's just what it is until you get knowledge and wisdom from other people, are going to things like this and understanding, oh, there is a better way to handle this besides a coffee cup at your head. I just think knowledge is key, that there's always something to to learn, and that's how we've been able to grow with our communication, and it's gotten way better
Wow.
throughout the years. So.
Well done. All right, Andrews, what do you got? Implementing communication, how has it changed throughout the years? The 5 years. Take us from year 1 to 5. No, just kidding. And give me an example.
I'd say it's grown tremendously, and I think the majority of the problem was me. I just didn't communicate. Like I guess the way I was brought up is my voice didn't matter, or shut up and be quiet. And so I would always internalize all my feelings and the way I saw things, or the things that I wanted to say, I would never say them. And so we'd get in an argument or a conversation, and it'd be like, why aren't you saying anything? And now as I think about it, like she would say things to like try to poke at me, so just to get a reaction out of me. And it's like, no, I'm not saying anything because I know what's going to happen if I say something. And so for me, it was just a lot of that, getting over that trauma, I guess. And then just at some point, you just got to grow up. Like,
Wow.
Instead of being a scared boy, be a responsible man and talk. Like that's the only way we're going to solve anything or get on the same page. So I think a lot of it, I take the brunt of that because it's like I was raised not to talk.
Wow.
So
That's big.
yeah.
That's big. What are your thoughts on that? You got anything, Jenna?
No, I'm just kidding. It was all him. So I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
We'll just leave it right
I
there.
was pretty much a great communicator.
We'll just put a period on that. Can I get that video recording, please?
Copy. No, I feel like kind of like how Lynette, like I was a yeller and just kind of crazy before I was a Christian. And so I feel like, yeah, he didn't communicate, but I overly communicated, like exactly how I felt about everything. So it's like we did not have a balance in our communication skills.
Wow.
I feel like now we do. Like I know when to shut up and he knows when to talk. Like it balanced itself
That's
out.
big. That's big. Knowing when to shut up and when to talk. That's so good. I think that's communication right there. What do you got, James?
I feel when we got married, I was a little more feisty or a little bit more like scrappy. Like
Right.
I've shared this, but I wanted to talk about things right away, like lift the rug up, talk about everything that's under it. I didn't like anything hidden. I'm not going to push anything under the rug. Like, let's get it out and let's deal with it. And he didn't want to. He needed time. And I don't think it's that he didn't want to. It's just that he needed time to do it. And I didn't like that. And it frustrated me and it hurt me because I just thought he didn't care. And so we've came a long way since then that, like I've said before, I have learned to be patient. But he's also learned that it doesn't need to sometimes take weeks, maybe a day or an hour or something. So we've learned to communicate there. And then also just that it changes over the years, like how we communicated when we had 1 kid versus when we had 2 and now 4, or even with our budget, or just no matter what the season is. Like we always have to be continually communicating because life changes all the time.
Right.
And so we've kind of had to navigate through that, I guess.
Yeah. You know, when you have 1 kid, you start to talk to your spouse through your kid. Isn't that silly? Can you tell mommy to do this? Maybe mommy needs to realize that. Remember that? Let's just use our kid as a phone. Oh, mommy needs to do this.
Go tell your dad to take the garbage out.
Yeah, exactly. Tell your daddy they can't talk. Oh, yeah, that's right. So for me, communication, I have this thing with this competitive feeling that I felt really early on in marriage. It felt really competitive. Like it felt like we were trying to compete with one another on who was right or who had done the most or who was not in the wrong. And so communication, I was really threatened by it because it always felt competitive, even to the point of taking out the garbage, or do you see the garbage is full, or do you see the dishes are full? And it was like, it would just be a question, but to me it was like this competitive thing, like, well, I would have done them, but you didn't. And so I would automatically be on the, like, trying to squirm out of it, where I couldn't even just sit and talk about it. It felt competitive to me. It felt like interrogating. And so I feel like we've gone from that to discovery, where it's like learning to discover. We've talked about this, like, what are you saying? What are you saying in that? What do you really mean by that? I love what Isaiah shared. Put my motive right out there in front first. Like, here's what I'm about to say, there you go. And so I really struggled with communication early on because I was always trying to squirm around that feeling of being interrogated, or that she was trying to point out things I wasn't doing and all the things she was, because she'll beat me at that every single time. And so it's been really, really cool to start to allow that to be discovery, where it's like, I care what you think about that. I care what you have to say about that. That actually adds to our marriage if I can hear you out. And so good stuff. All right, men, what is something your wife does that shows you respect? What's something your wife does that just fills that respect need?
I think the biggest thing is most of the time I have the final say, or we're in agreement of the input that, I'm the period to the end, where it's like we're not going to finalize anything until Dad has the say, or if Jason doesn't have the say. And so I really, really honor that in her.
Can I say something about that? I was feisty like Jamie was kind of at the beginning too. And so I think early on, I would just make decisions and do things without even talking to him. And like I was saying, we were, in different positions in different places, and he was gone a lot. And so I just took a lot of control that I overstepped. And so it was a process to get to that point where it's not just like, whatever you say goes. I mean, it's a communication and conversation, but I had to start like asking him things. Wow. Like I would just jump and do things and jump and say things. And it was a big thing, a big struggle in our marriage to get to that point where I would go to him and say like, let's make plans for this. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? I need you to decide.
Wow. That's cool. What do you got, Tim?
I would say a lot of it maybe is more of an appreciation, but out of respect, just the little things that she does that I don't even catch on till later. She'll put little notes in my job folder and sitting here talking to a customer and open up the page, and all of a sudden it says, "You're amazing," in super big, bold print.
Wow.
And I just see that when I'm talking to a customer. It's like, I wonder how long this has been here, but man, it makes me feel really good at this time. And just those little notes everywhere. If I go on a trip or whatever, I know my bag's got notes all over it. Or if she leaves and, goes down to Texas with her mom or something like that, I just search the house looking for little notes, and they'll be under the pillow, they'll be in the dresser drawer. And,
wow.
It makes you feel really good. Like, it makes you feel like the man of the house.
Wow.
That you're appreciated that much, that she goes out of her way to make a point to know that she's thinking of me, even when she's not there.
Wow. That's cool. Isaiah, what do you got?
I would say service, like kind of along the lines of what Tim was saying. I'm more of a like do-it-yourself kind of person, just get it done. And when she beats me to it, like where I have like this agenda, like, oh, I'm going to get this done when I get home, and I get there and it's already done. And I'm just like, I guess I didn't realize I needed that until she did it. Or like even this morning, I didn't have to make a lunch. And the reason I have to make a lunch is because she left me a note on the mirror. Like she drew and dry erase mark on the mirror. Hey, I made you a lunch. You're an awesome husband. Love you. And it was just like, wow. I am an awesome husband. Thank you. No, but just that. Like, I was not expecting that at all. I didn't ask for that, but it was there, and it's like, I appreciate that.
Wow.
But I didn't even know I needed that.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that.
That's cool. Good job, ladies. Well done. Mine would be Jamie expresses gratitude in everything I ask help for. It's always, I would love to. Hey, can you help me with this? I would love to. She does that every time, and I think, how in the world do you love to do that? But she does. She's always expressing gratitude to be a help. She lifts me up in my home all the time. She's always celebrating me with the kids, cheering me on. We've talked about that. When I come home, it's always a big celebration. And she really is my biggest cheerleader on purpose. She does that on purpose, and she's good at it, and just lets me know that we're going to win and that she's by my side no matter what goes on. I'm with you, and we're going to win, and so it means a lot. Women, what is something your husband does that shows you love?
I think it's just a lot of little things. Like sometimes I'll be at work and I'll hear somebody start whistling, and then I'll turn around and he showed up with coffee. Or we've got 5 kids, and so it's busy at the house, and sometimes I just need a break, and he'll sense it, and he'll be like, hey, why don't you go run to town and do whatever tonight? I'll get the kids and get them all ready for bed and tucked in, and just the little things like that means so much.
Wow. Good job, bro. Lynette?
Same. I think Tim's really good at telling me, or making me feel good about myself. I don't know. The sexual harassment cases in our company is the biggest thing
In our company.
that any company probably has.
They own a business together. That's hilarious.
But I really love it when whatever I'm doing, if I'm out in the barn with the horses or trying to spiff up the house or whatever, if he just jumps in and does whatever I'm doing with me, I really feel love at that.
That's awesome.
I just love him to jump in and do what I'm doing.
That's cool. What you got, Jenna?
I would say like I am a coffee addicted. I'm addicted to it. So anytime like he just surprises me with coffee, like I'll still be sleeping, and he'll wake me up and have coffee like from Starbucks, not out of the coffee maker at home, like from Starbucks. And so that always makes me feel loved. And then we have 4 kids. We homeschool. I homeschool. And so like you have days that laundry doesn't get done, dishes don't get done, your house looks like a hurricane went on, but he'll be here 8 hours, 9 hours, still come home and be willing to do laundry, be willing to pick up, be willing to help me with the kids and shower them, just so it's not like such a heavy load on me and not make me feel like a failure for not doing that. Like, no, like you homeschooled our kids today, or you did this today, like you stayed home with 4 of them, like you did awesome. I'll clean, it's not a big deal. So
Cool. What you got?
A lot of that, it's a lot of the little things. It's coffee dates, just sneaking away for an hour and getting coffee. It's helping with the kids, just jumping in, getting them ready for bed, and giving them a bath. It's all that. It's stuff with school. It's encouraging me as a homeschool mom because I feel like the enemy is always saying, like, you're not doing enough. You should be doing this. You should be doing this. They should be learning more. Like, it's always going to be like that, and you're always super encouraging with anything with school, and it's just a lot of little things.
All right. How do you resolve conflict? How do you guys resolve conflict?
Something that we do is always try at least to wait until the kids are in bed. So kind of like what you guys were saying earlier, like we just have made that a priority. That's when we have our big conversations, is at the end of the night when they're not around. And just peacefully, like there's no point in screaming, there's no point in yelling, nobody's gonna feel heard, that's not gonna accomplish anything, and nobody is motivated by being yelled at or screamed at or talked down to. And so if you want change, or if there's things that need to be resolved, or we have a conflict that we need to work on, you are motivated to change by somebody else speaking kindly about it and telling you, like, this is what we're going to do, this is how we can do it, what do you want to accomplish, and being heard. And so just coming at it like 2 mature people.
Wow. That's brilliant. Who would have thought? You got an answer for that? How you resolve conflict?
These questions came up, and earlier today, Kel texted them to me, and she's like, well, you better look them over, have some answers. And I texted her back. I said, well, we just wrestle around in bed. So that's how we solve our conflict.
I'm the winner. How do you guys resolve conflict?
Well, if the coffee cup didn't work, I moved to bigger things like rocks, or he did get a wheelbarrow thrown at him one time. But no, I don't know. I used to panic. I really did. If he was to leave an argument or like just have to walk away, I literally would panic and do stupid stuff. Throw myself in front of the car. Just panic. But over the years, we have figured out why I would panic and what that would do, and he'd be like, I'm coming back, I just need a break or whatever. And so honestly, I don't know, we communicate better now.
No, I think from past relationships, I'm not a huge conflict guy. I just don't. My mind don't work that way. It doesn't work that quick. It just seems like everybody's coming at me with, or you're coming at me with, two guns a-blazing, and I can't get out of the way. And there's nothing I can say to stop it. There was nothing I could do. So it was just, okay, I'm just going to go for a drive. So I'd get in the pickup and I would leave, and just that calm, cool off period. But yeah, it's literally now is understanding one another. If God put us two people exactly the same together, you're not going to get anything accomplished. And so when you start to realize that she's completely opposite, her mind processes things differently than mine does, to where you have to have that common ground, and that common ground is communication. That's the only thing you can do, is use your words in a nice, peaceful way to where they're heard.
Wow.
And when you degrade, when you yell, when you throw things and stuff like that, you shut down all that communication, and it just puts more frustration and conflict. It just puts fuel on the fire. And so I think when you realize that you're never going to be the same, you're never going to think the same as your spouse, they're not going to understand your words perfectly to a T how you want them to come out, where you can continually talk through that problem, then I think the conflict is communication, and it's more of a peaceful tone, and you can resolve anything that way. And that's what we've learned to do, is to know that we're two opposites.
Yep.
And even though we probably got a little bit of pride in both of us here, we're both opposites, and she doesn't necessarily understand what I'm trying to say, and I don't understand what she's trying to say. So we got to take a step back and start really slow and just understand that we're out for each other's good.
Wow, that's good. What do you guys got? Resolving conflict.
One of the things that we have realized is that we don't compromise on anything, but on everything, our goal is to be on the same page. And so the idea being, like, if I said that this building was compromised, is it stronger or weaker? It's weaker. So why would I compromise in my marriage? Why would I make my marriage weaker? But if we get on the same page, then it's stronger. And so for our conflict resolution, it's always get on the same page. We're not afraid to come back to certain topics. I know early on in our marriage, I felt like we were fighting about the same thing over and over and over again because we were trying to find a compromise. Whereas, no, why do you feel that way? Or why do I feel this way? And can we get on the same page about it? And so for us, it's the goal is the same page, nothing else. Nothing else matters in that regard. But knowing when to walk away from a conversation and go, we'll be back, because the goal is to be on the same page. And so that's our way.
Wow. That's an interesting thought, that, well, let's just compromise. Well, if you compromise, a building would crash if it's compromised. That's a great point. I guess I hadn't even thought of that before. Like, no, let's be strong.
And when he says, like, we'll come back to it, like, we're not joking. We have painted the outside of our house twice because, like, I chose a color and he's like, I hate it. And I'm like, no, but it's great. And then we left it for like a year and a half before we could actually compromise. Like, oh, well, you like blue and I like red, so let's do purple. Like, no. Like, either we're to find a blue that we both like or a red that we both like, because that's what we're going to go with.
Wow.
And then I think, too, like, knowing when to walk away, because I feel like so many times, like with us, conflict, it's like, is that a me thing that it bothers me and it's not really a conflict, if that makes sense what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, I just need to check myself. Like, am I being petty with it? Like, well, I tell you all the time to pick your socks up or your clothes out of the bathroom. That's me. That's me. I can't pick my clothes up out of the bathroom. But it's like, okay, he's like honestly just like really stopped saying anything to me about it and just grabs it. Like, he's just a good sport about it. But it's like, is it being petty with it? Like, well, you don't pick your clothes up out of the bathroom. It's like, okay, then I'm just starting conflict just to let you know, like, I did something. Yeah. Like, I had to do something you should have done.
Yeah.
But,
wow.
Yeah.
What you got?
How do we resolve conflict? I was just thinking, like, truly hearing the other person, kind of like what we talked about a few weeks ago and on one of the nights, was that he has a perspective I don't see, and it's easy for me to forget that sometimes, that I just think my way's right, my way's worked for me for all these years, my way is the best, but really there is so much that he has to offer. And my instinct used to be just to shut that down and try to get him to see it my way so we could do it my way. But really realizing that there's a lot of things that his way worked better than mine.
That's good. That's good. No. We used to use ping pong. That was an awesome way to resolve conflict. We would play ping pong, and the winner was the winner. We'd play ping pong for like kitchen hours. Like if I win, you're doing all the dishes and scrubbing the floor. It really worked well, actually. And then I'd talk her into double or nothing and then get out of all of it. So yeah, we use ping pong. No, that's not what. I think one of the really good things for me anyway in resolving conflict was to learn empathy. And I'm still working at this. I do not have this figured out. But working to really feel what she feels when we're in the middle of something. Like that's really, really hard for me. But it's amazing when I can go there, like kind of how you guys have been talking about. The pride goes down, the guard goes down, and it's like, it's one thing to just hear what she's saying. If it's like, well, I feel this way about it, or I feel this, to just hear that, but to actually feel that with her changes my disposition. It changes the way I go about it or the way that we're going to tackle somebody. And so empathy has been a big deal for me, trying to work on that where resolving conflict is concerned.
One thing on that too, like with me and Jenna, going into it, I ask her, do you want me to hear you or do you want me to fix it? Because like, even in conflict resolution, sometimes it's just hearing her out. Like, this is what I'm feeling, and I just want somebody to hear it. But I would go into fix it mode, and it's like, why are you trying to fix me? I'm not asking to be fixed. And so, even that, like, all right, before we dive into this thing, do you want me to hear you, or do you want me to come up with a solution for you? And that's been huge.
That's good. Yeah, men are fix it. So we just want to. Well, you just tell me, I'll get it fixed real quick. And we miss the whole point of empathy, or miss the whole point of hearing what really is going on. And I think sometimes in the fix-it mode, you don't even resolve the conflict, right? A lot of times the conflict could be just not being heard or like feeling like I'm alone in this thing. And so that's a great point. All right, what strength do you feel you bring to your marriage? What strength do you feel that you bring to your marriage? Everyone gets to answer this. What strength do you bring rather than being the winner in bed?
Time management and organization. I think those are the two that I would say I bring to the table in our marriage.
Time management, what'd you say?
And organization.
And organization.
I come home to a clean house all the time. My house is never a mess. And at first it used to drive me crazy because I was like, just sit down and relax. Why do you have to pick up the house all the time? And now it's like the thing that I love. Like I just can, there's just peace there with that. So I do appreciate that.
Are you allowed to like sit on the couch and stuff? There's not like plastic on the couch.
No, there's no plastic.
Oh, that's
on the
cool.
couch.
That's good.
Like he's not scrubbing the toilets, but all the toys are picked up. Everything. I mean, it just looks nice, and so
Wow.
of course I do love that. I think I'm just able to be calm in the middle of stressful situations throughout the years, whether it's been health scares with our children or just the things that come up with 5 kids and having to manage all of that. Like I feel like I can multitask really well and keep calm
Wow.
through the difficult things. Like I'm
Wow.
not going to freak out and scream and yell and
Yeah.
get upset.
Wow. That's a big deal. What do you guys got?
I'm not throwing cups.
Well, I don't know. I had to ask him. Like, it's hard to talk about yourself. Well, this is what I bring. But he said harmony, that I bring harmony. And I feel that that's true. Like, if everybody's happy, then mama's happy.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand it if the kids were having conflict or, you know, with him or him with them or like, I just like everybody getting along, be happy.
I don't know. I think I bring stability. Okay, stability. I bring stability to the relationship. And
I do what I'm told.
and I think of myself more as like a futuristic planner. You know, everything in my house or everything that I do, everything that I buy is for a setup to make our lives easier. And so if there's, like the skid steer, I make sure that's running easy. So I teach all the kids how to run the skid steer. So if something were to happen, they can still get the hay down and they can still feed. They can load it in a trailer. They can go do their own work. So I try and teach everybody everything that I know to make their life easier. But I'm sure it kind of probably makes it a little harder. Because there's a lot of stuff that I just like, wow, why'd you do it that way? But I don't know. I just try and be stable on a rock, and just if anybody has something, they can bring it to me, and I just listen to it. And again, it's that same thing. She's told me before, it's like, I don't want you to fix anything. So I had to learn how to listen, to be the firm spot where they could rely on me.
Wow.
It sounds good.
What you guys got?
I bring problem solving. So like when something happens, it's like, all right, let's not freak out about it because there's got to be a way out of it. And so, or what's our next step, I guess. So the problem solving aspect.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess boldness would be what I bring. Like, not afraid to tell you how it is. Might not always be the nicest way of telling you, like in our marriage, but I feel like I'm good at holding him accountable and like being bold with that, I guess. But yeah.
All right, I wrote 23 things down. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I wrote
feisty.
Financial. We work the budget together, but I'm the one that, like I said, I'm the nerd. I get it set up. I kind of get it rolling. Then I communicate it, and we make sure it's all good for the month. But I'm definitely the nerd. Organization, and I wrote health. Like, I feel if Jason did the grocery shopping or the cooking, we would be at Culver's probably every night.
Yeah.
And so he has a really good attitude about the meals that I make. Even if he doesn't love them and love all the vegetables and stuff, he'll eat them with a good attitude and help the kids eat them that way too.
Yeah, you do very good at that. I do a lot of the cauliflower shopping, but yeah, other than that.
Kind of got that down, so.
I feel like I bring vision to the marriage. Jamie's always mentioned that. I didn't really see it till she started saying it, but she's several times said we'd still be where we were 10 years ago if it wasn't for you pulling me out of my comfort zone. And I'm just a mover. I'm always seeing out, like, we could do that. That is possible. That would be something we could tackle. And so we've tried all kinds of stuff. So I think I've had 6 or 7 businesses in my life. I got stewing this, stewing that, stewing this. It's like stewing everywhere. Just let's make a business out of it. And so vision, I'm always looking out. Some calming stability. Like Kelly said, I kind of feel like I'm just it'll be all right. Whatever, it'll be fine. You're good. Whatever. Just don't get worked up about much. Just try to stay peaceful. And humor. Man, I love goofing around. I love seeing my kids laugh. I love making Jamie laugh. I don't know if she fake laughs for me or not, but she's laughing. So I just love humor. I love the house being awake and alive. And if we're here, we might as well have fun. If we're all going to be together, it might as well be a good time. And so, yeah, always doing something fun along that line. A couple more things I want to talk about tonight before we go. I want to ask you some questions about coming out of the me seat into the we seat. If you guys have any thoughts about that, or maybe any examples where you feel like, yeah, I think maybe this is something that really brought us to the we seat, where we used to be divided in it, or we used to be on our own. Is there anything you can talk about as far as coming together in the we seat? And so we're going to come up to that. But before we come up to that, I want to talk a little bit about sex, because we haven't got to touch that yet, and I think it's very, very important. Ashley and them, Dave and Ashley touched that, and I think it's really important. It is one area in marriage that is so important, and it's one thing that God has given marriages to keep them healthy and strong. It really is a specific, precious thing to marriages, that if we just cast that off, or it never becomes something that we talk about, then it's just this thing that we don't know where to put it. It's there. And just like money, sex is one area where most people fight their whole relationship about, because they've never learned what it is. They've never learned how to talk about it. They've never really even worked anything around it. It's just this weird pink elephant in the room. And so I don't know if I'm going to put you guys on the spot, but I do. If you have anything on
I got this.
this,
Let's go.
if you have anything seriously where you're willing to be naked on the platform about,
All the time.
We've had some really interesting conversations and thoughts about this, that it's amazing what women go through in life. It's amazing the percentage of women that have been violated. And so when they come into a marriage and they hear that sex is man's greatest need, they go, la, 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 la. I don't want anything to do with that. Don't even talk to me about that. That's disgusting. I don't want to hear it. And it becomes this thing that's almost like, that's the thing over there. Well, then you hear it's your husband's greatest need. And it feels like, God, are you trying to torture me? Like, really? And so we got to get to this place where we realize, no, it's a gift from God. Like, it's seriously something that brings vibrancy and health to your marriage. And so even looking at it as what is sex inside of marriage, it's not what we see in our culture. It's not this pornographic using one another just to feel better and then thanks a lot. No, there's this intimacy inside of it that's so powerful. It's outside of shame. You know, people learn to just have sex with the lights off. Well, why have the lights off? Doesn't matter if you have them off, but why have them off? Is it because there's shame? Is it because you've never become comfortable with one another? Is it because you've never come to a place where that's a comfortable spot to be? Or is it just something that we just tolerate? And so there's all these things around sex and what is it for and what does it do, that I feel like if we don't get to the bottom of it, then we just get stuck having this thing in our marriage that turns out to be a big fight. And so first and foremost, I would say this: sex is probably the main thing you need to communicate about. Don't get married and just hope it works itself out. Like, that's the thing you should be talking about. All of it. And what do you enjoy? What do you not enjoy? Quit licking my ear. It's disgusting. Well, I thought you liked that. Like, imagine blowing on your spouse's ear for 10 years and she hates it. Well, couldn't you just told me that at the beginning? No, because for some reason we don't talk about it. It's this thing that we try to make work, but it's probably the one place in marriage that doesn't get communicated around. And so Jamie and I have worked very hard and this has just been lately, probably the last 5 years, where we have really been diligent about talking about our sex life. Like, no, we're going to talk about it. Like, what do you enjoy? How do you like to have sex? How many times can we do it? Every day or twice a day, or like 3 times But this is amazing. This is amazing because when you get on the same page with it, it's just like a budget. You realize that in that place, we're investing into this. Not into just me or not into just her. What we're investing into this. And sex becomes a place where it invests into our relationship as a couple, not just this thing that we're trying to tolerate or this thing that pops up or this, well, I don't know what, And so there's this power in communication where that's involved. Do you have anything you want to add to that? Oh, you don't have a mic. Oh, man.
Just kidding. I think it's really cool to talk about. I never heard about sex from the pulpit growing up. And so I think it is really cool to talk about. It doesn't have to be the pink elephant in church and in your home. And so as much as we make it that, or as awkward as we make it, that's what it's going to be. And so somehow you have to get over just that being awkward, and just like you communicate what you want and everything else, where you want to eat, what you're going to, like you said, your budget, whatever it is, like you have to learn how to communicate sex. And so it's enjoyable. I guess I'm just repeating everything you said, but it does. It has to be something that's thoroughly communicated. And just because you think that your spouse might want it this way, they're going to think you want it this way. And you're probably both wrong. And so you got to dig and get that figured out. And it changes too, just
right.
like everything else. Like it changes over the season. So
Yeah, you got to hide from your kids. You got to lock the doors. You got to. Something that was really interesting when we first got married, we didn't even know how to ask if one of us wanted to have sex or not. And so it would become this thing when we finally got to the bedroom where it was like, hey, think I'm hot over here? And I would take it as rejection. No, I don't want to. And I would pout. I would roll over and pout, and we'd sleep butt to butt. There's no glory butt to butt. The glory's face to face. And fine, and so you're doing this. And I would literally pout because I would feel rejected just because she didn't want anything to do with it. Until I actually saw a comedian talk about it, and it convicted me so much that I'm a pouter. I quit doing it. It was so crazy to me. It just like turned on a light bulb. Like, what is the pouting about? And so we learned ways to communicate. And so early on in the day, here's just one little thing that we started with is, hey, would you save some time for me tonight? And that sounds silly, but you can ask that question at 9 o'clock in the morning. You can ask that question before you leave the house. And it's amazing that something so simple would create this platform of intimacy. Because she could prepare herself throughout the door, because women have to prepare all day for that. Like, there's a lot that goes in. Men, we don't really have to prepare at all. It's just kind of like, you can be rude to us all day long, and we'll be like, sure, right? Oh, you don't agree with that, Isaiah? You just had a look on your face like, not me. And so that was a big deal for us. Right in the beginning was just a way to say, hey, can you save some time for me tonight? And it was amazing what that did. Maybe it was more for me than you, but I remember it being such a, like I guess you feel so elementary, like we don't even know how this works. And when you finally narrow something down that says, hey, let's just get on the same page with this, it was just a way to win in that area. And so you guys have any thoughts on that? I'm going to throw you under the bus. Tim, I know you do.
Mine too.
They are adults. They are adults now.
Earmuffs. So first of all, there isn't a lot of talking.
Sexual harassment.
Well, I got a hot wife, so it makes it difficult to say no, but
If you just hold me once in a while.
I just want cuddled. So, no, actually, yeah, it's great. I mean, sex is tough to talk about sometimes, but so many people use it as a ploy to get what they want, or they use it as a coin in their marriage that says, no, you didn't do this, forget it, no.
Wow.
And you cause so much division in your relationship because of that, because now you get, like the man, like you said, he just gets all huffy, or, I don't know if it happens the other way, but the girl could do the same thing, And when you start using that as a tool in your marriage instead of just a response of love to it, you get so much conflict, frustration, and it just compounds any problem that you have, because then that's one thing that comes up. It's like, well, you never do this, you never do that. And like you said, you never use the words you never, because that's not true. Not every day, but it should be something fun to talk about.
Right.
It should be something that you can encourage one another with. And
I think that's really interesting. Like we've been talking about, we all think differently. And so I've heard it said like this, that a man has sex to show love. A woman has sex to receive love. And so even the way we come into that is we're coming from totally different needs, totally different perspectives, totally different reasons. And so if that's not even communicated, then we have two different thoughts on even what that's for and what that's doing. And so, yeah, good stuff. It just sparked in me with Jamie that one thing that Jamie's communicated with me is, and Ashley touched this too, is just the desire when you don't feel beautiful. When I just don't feel like I'm on my game, like it's hard for me to enjoy this when I don't feel beautiful or feel sexy or whatever. And we've talked about that and how that's a sacrifice. Like, I'm going to allow sex to be enjoyable even though I'm not feeling beautiful. And that's kind of something that Jamie's talked about, is just a kind of a self-denial, I guess, in that area, that I'm going to enjoy it on purpose. And we have to think of it like this, men, or as well, ladies, that if we come into the place of communication and we just sit there and go,
Fine. No. Yes. Whatever. I don't care. Do what you want.
that our communication with women is their sex for us. And so we should be just engaged in that place as we expect them to be when we're getting our deepest need filled. And so it's so amazing there how that plays. Help me out, guys. Isaiah, what you got? Give me something.
So I didn't really want to go here, but I guess I will. For me, early on, sex was tainted for me. I was exposed to things that I shouldn't have been exposed to as an early age, so I didn't really understand what sex was. And so it made it hard for me. I know for the both of us, we were promiscuous before we even got into marriage. So going into marriage, sex was also that tainted thing of, because you can have pleasure without intimacy, right? And that's the danger of sex before marriage, is the pleasure before intimacy. Because if you have intimacy first, then you won't want anything else. And so for me, if I would have heard that men need sex as a boy, it would have ruined me. And when I say a boy, I mean like 21, 25. It would have ruined me because I would have just seen my wife as an object. And so for us now, understanding what I went through and overcoming a lot of that stuff and starting to reshape my mind about sex is, for me now, if I don't have my wife's heart, I don't want sex. Like as a boy, just give me your body and I'm good. But as a man, it's like, if your heart's not in it, I don't want it. And so even that, like, if my wife is in that mode of, like you're saying, oh, pouting and, oh, whatever, fine, whatever. It's like, do I have your heart? And that's not her fault if I don't have her heart. That's mine.
Wow.
And so for me, it's gaining the heart before anything else. And I found that that's been really huge in shifting even our identity, or our identity of sex and things of that nature. But that's my view of it. So when you're like, oh, when you're mad and we'll just do it, like, not me. Like, I want your heart. Like,
That's
I could care
awesome.
less about the physical part of it.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's dynamite. Like, pleasure outside of intimacy. Gosh, there's so much in that. But I think along the lines of, I've heard women say, I feel like I'm raped by my own husband. Like, it's all one-sided. And that's the kind of stuff where it's just pleasure without intimacy. And that's not a one-sided problem. That's not a man problem. That's not just a rude man. That's no communication around something that God designed for marriage. And I guess that if anything, that's what I'm trying to push tonight, is learn to talk about that. Get on the same page in that area. Make it enjoyable for both. It's not just a one-sided thing. That should be something that you both enjoy, that you both go into on purpose, and the intimacy's there. That's dynamite.
Even one more thing on that, sorry, Tim. It's okay. For men, I guess specifically, Christian men, I should say specifically, you're going to go to bed without your need being fulfilled, and you're not going to pout about it. Like, that's what it's called to be a Christian. You lay down your need to fulfill somebody else's. And so there are nights that I go to bed that I want my need fulfilled, but I go to bed laying it down, going, no, that's not what's supposed to happen tonight. So again, that pouting aspect, like, that goes back to selfishness.
Yes.
You're only thinking about your own need. And so
Right.
not to say that gives your wife a right to deprive you of whatever, but
Yeah.
as far as it's concerned, you lay your need down.
That's so good. It is selfishness. And I think that's what hit me, is like, really, that's all I can think about is me. Even if it's going to violate her or her need or what's lacking in her, well, that don't care. It's just about me. And it's pure selfishness. And I was in that. I mean, literally, lip out, just, oh, pitiful me. And it's gross. It's gross. That's a great point. We had a talk the other day, and I thought it was so interesting. We were kind of talking around, the three of us, Isaiah, Jason, and I were talking around what do you think it is that turns your wife on? And we were talking about this because we were talking about the difference between boys and men in this area of hearing that sex is a man's greatest need. And, that's so funny because you turn that the other way and it's like, what do you think turns your husband on? A look? Touch his big toe? Like, what'd that mean? Nothing. I was scooting over. Like, sorry. Right? But it was so interesting on that other level of being men rather than boys. Almost every one of us, our answer was something with the family. Like when I lay on the floor with my kids and wrestle them and I'm involved in the family, like I'm engaged in the household, my wife's chasing me around the house, straight up. And it was so interesting that thought of growing up and realizing that there's a whole nother side of this that God designed. And so even in the areas that we get attracted and turned on and want to pursue one another, those come from different areas, men, than just what we experience. There's something that goes on in your wife that creates intimacy and a desire where she desires to pursue you. And it's not the same thing that it is for you. And I thought that was so interesting just to talk around that. Like, wow.
I'll say one thing for us is we both grew up in the church, and all you ever heard was don't have sex, don't have sex, don't have sex. And then you get married, and it's like,
now what?
Like 5 minutes later, then it's fine, and you're supposed to. And it was that.
Wow.
Like what mentally, it just was a shift from like don't, oh do, like it was
right.
That fast that you had to like make this adjustment and then have those weird conversations like, oh okay, now what does this look like? So
right. And
we have a running joke, like at night when we're in bed, he'll be like, so what do you want to talk about? Like that's the prelude to
I love it.
Activity.
That's helpful right there. That is helpful. I love that.
So actually that did happen a long time ago where it was like this 20-minute spiel where, I'd submit myself and listen to her talk. But just over the years, I've realized that, if I just stop doing what I do and just communicate with her and understand that, it just comes.
Wow.
It's together as one. And so, but I do remember those times where it's like, all right, start the time watch. Here we go. Like 20 minutes of whatever you got
wow.
spit out. But now it's to the point where it's like, and it's not even like I got to prepare myself to do that. I enjoy actually communicating with her more and more. So it's just it's the good cycle.
That's cool. If you feel a need, your need can be filled. Wow.
I remembered what I was going to say. I was just going to say to keep it spicy, and for every couple that's going to be different, but especially to the women. Like, I remember one time I went shopping and I came home with some new sweatpants, and I was like, "Hey, look, I got these sweatpants today." And he's like, "Oh, I love when you buy new lingerie."
Yeah.
And it just kind of hit me like, "Oh yeah, I don't really wear lingerie anymore. Like, I wear sweatpants all the time." And so it was just, he was totally being funny, but it was like, oh gosh, that is so true. And
yeah.
Tara showed up yesterday and I'm in my sweatpants, so I still wear sweatpants a lot. But it really is, I feel like the women's responsibility to keep that more spicy. Like he said, the man doesn't need to do anything really for the most part. And if we can keep it exciting, I think that's really cool.
I want to thank you guys so much for just being transparent and talking to that. And I hope it gave you some tips and some help, because I do know it's one thing that God's given us as a gift. And it really is sad to see it turn out to be something that's just a thorn in the marriage or something that actually creates fights. It should actually create vibrancy and intimacy inside your relationship. And I know there's all kinds of things and there's all kinds of reasons and even health conditions and things like that, but you can still talk about those and you can still be adults around those things. And I think that's what creates strength among you. And if you're in here tonight and you're not married yet, I love this thought, and I would give it to you and I would ask you to just lay a hold of it. And it's the fact that purity leads to intimacy. Purity leads to intimacy. The reason why God doesn't want you having sex outside of marriage is because you bring garbage into the marriage. And true intimacy, when it's time to be intimate with somebody, is when you realize how awesome that purity was. is when you realize how awesome it was that I stayed pure, that I kept myself pure. Purity leads to intimacy. Powerful, powerful intimacy. And so that's why God says things like no sex before marriage, because that intimate place is so precious that you don't want it impure. You don't want to bring a bunch of garbage into that moment. Purity is what leads to powerful intimacy. And so I hope that helped you tonight. And last but not least, give me one thing or two or three or whatever you got that you feel has moved you out of the me seat into the we seat. Or maybe something in your marriage where you finally felt like selfishness got confronted and it was like, what am I doing? Or why do I do this? And so if you got something on that, let me have it, and then we'll go on our way.
Kids.
Yeah, right?
And for me, it was more so my oldest daughter. I realized that she was going to find a guy just like me, and I did not want her to do that. And so that got me out of the me seat. Like, oh, you're going to marry someone just like your father.
Wow.
And I don't like your father. And so it was just like, that got me out of the me seat. Like, this is bigger than me. And then one of the practical things you can do as well is get rid of all of the me furniture in your house. Seriously, like
that's an interesting thought.
Oh, you just got it. You're a lazy boy. No, again, like nothing is off limits. Like that's not mine and that's not yours. That's ours. This is us. This is we. And so get rid of all of that me furniture out of your house.
Wow.
It'll help with that.
That's really good.
I just think realizing the companionship, I mean, it's a mindset. I mean, it takes 21 days to stop a habit. So I think the big key of getting out of the me seat is getting engaged with what your spouse is doing with them, you know, and to help them. And in our relationship, it's been more of, yeah, we're empty nesters. The kids are gone. So we rely on one another for almost everything. She comes to work with me sometimes, but it was just me and her. And we were responsible for our lives and anything we could do for our kids. It was just one of those things where you had to shut off the selfishness and say, if we don't do this together, we're not going to get it done. Wow. And, you know, a guy once told me a long time ago, he said, if you don't do things with your spouse, they'll go find somebody to do them with. And that's two-sided. That goes for the men and the women. And you see that so much, and it's rampant even in the church, in the Christian religion, is divorce. And if people would just kind of step aside and you have to put yourself out there. You've got to get rid of that selfishness and go do something, whether you think, I don't like doing that, you know. But if you don't put yourself out there, then you start finding the division in your relationship. And that's just what's brought us to the we seat, was knowing that we need each other. We have to do this together.
That's cool.
I was just going to say something. I think too, like how he said with kids, like just like statistically, like for me, like you hear how big divorce is even in the church, and it's like just hearing that, it's like, okay, what can we do to make sure we never end up there? Like, if you have to tell me the hardest truth I have to hear, like, I'd rather hear that than you give me divorce papers. And so being willing to hear whatever he has to say, like when he prefaces things, like, are you ready to hear what I have to say? Like, yeah. That's probably a really big thing, too. And then I just have to say, like, when he said, like, having our oldest Zariah, like, is... We were together for 6 years before we got married, weren't Christians, very, very, very bad relationship. And it's like, to see the man that Isaiah used to be to who he is now is like night and day. And if he wouldn't have changed that, we would have never gotten married. We wouldn't have probably our last 2 kids. And like, I probably wouldn't want to have changed because he didn't change. Wow. And so it's like, just telling people our testimony of where we've been and how hard it's been. Huh. And then people not believing, like, that's who Isaiah used to be. It just rocks my world, and it makes my heart happy that people wouldn't even recognize him today that did 10, 12 years ago. So
that's awesome.
That's cool. That leads kind of to what I was going to say is like we don't realize the impact of our marriages. They don't affect just us and not just the church, but certainly the church, certainly our friends and our family and our neighbors and our coworkers, and just your relationship has made an imprint for sure in probably thousands of people, and you really don't know how many people are watching you. And so I think it's a really big deal and certainly something worth getting off the me seat for, to just say like, God, you have a bigger picture than what I think this marriage is.
Wow, that's awesome. You guys
I
have
would just have to say knowledge, doing things like this, out of my comfort zone. I wish we would have got it, or I would have got it way back when we were raising our kids, because we didn't raise them as well as we're doing now. But it's worth it. It's so much better than the alternative.
right.
I mean, I want this. I want this to work, and yeah, just keep gaining knowledge. It's always worth it.
Wow, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think for me, I got an example is in the past when Kel and I would get frustrated with each other, we'd be shut down for days. And I know in the last month we had one of those episodes, and it was one day, and it felt like a month. It honestly was the worst time, and it keeps getting worse like that, where I know it's like, okay, let's just get in the we seat, like serious. This is way too long where I'll just humble myself. I'm in the wrong, and let's get in the we seat. But I do know in the past that I would just do it. It would be 2-3 days. We wouldn't talk, wouldn't visit, and yeah, maybe even a week. But in that time period, it's dwindling because I know how important she is to me. So
That's awesome. Wow.
I work at Kohl's just a couple nights a week, and last night I was at work, and there was a married couple, and they fought about everything in my hearing for 5 minutes. They were trying to pick out a coat for their son, and the guy held up an orange coat, and she's like, "Are you stupid? Do I want an orange coat?" And the guy's like, "No." And I mean, this just went on for 5 minutes about picking out clothes for their children, and it just made me stop in my tracks, and their children were there with them. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, how often have I said or done something, in my marriage in front of my kids that I'm not proud of? But just hearing this conversation for 5 minutes, it just shocked me about, how unhealthy from the outside that marriage appeared to be in that quick snapshot, and how people struggle so much with marriage and relationships throughout their entire life. And like Lynette was saying, like, when we got married, we were 20, and we had never heard of anything like this. There was no internet where you went and searched about like how to have a good marriage, or there weren't, I'm sure there was books, but we didn't even think to like read a book about marriage. Like, there's things out there that are so helpful. Backtrack to when we had that issue that we talked about earlier, like 5 years into our marriage, we got invited to our friend's house whose mother loved marriage. She was like passionate about marriage and family like you guys are. And so it was this group of, 6-8 couples that were married who this mom didn't even know. Like, she just told her friends to start inviting your married friends to her house.
Wow.
And she and her husband would sit us down, and we would have like a Bible study, and then we would talk about marriage. And we're like 23, 24. We didn't know some of these couples, but so much good came out of that. And so like, even my encouragement is like, you might be older, you might have a wonderful marriage, and invest into the next generation.
Wow.
She just took us in and loved on us and talked to us about marriage and what it should look like and what it shouldn't look like and what motherhood looked like. And there was people in there who, even like the motherhood aspect, like, we were young parents, and there was parents there that had home births and water births, and some people had their kids in the hospital and with epidurals and without epidurals, and some of those conversations are just heated, weird, you're passionate about something. But this was like a place where everybody was welcome and everybody could share, and it was so life-giving. Like, I had never been in a room of all these young married couples with this woman who was so willing to share her information. So share your story and be willing to...
Wow.
to learn from other people too, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And I would second that. You have something to give somebody. You really do. Even where you're at right now, you have something to give away, and somebody needs that. I remember early on in our marriage, Jamie and I got in a fight one time, and I just got in the truck and left. Like, I'm out. Same thing. I just need to think. I don't want to say something stupid in anger that's going to take me years to fix. And when I got home from that, she was hot, mad, hurt. Like, to me, it was like, wow, you made that a big deal. Like, geez, I just had to go breathe.
Animated. You called me animated all the time.
Yeah, very. You're so animated. What are you animating that for? It wasn't a big deal. But as we started to communicate around that, she realized that fear and that frustration came off the fact that her dad had left. And it was the same picture. Like, are you going to leave me? And it bursted this thing in her that freaked her out. And it was probably one of the first times where I kind of realized I'm a boy in a man's world. Like, okay, this whole thing is a lot more serious than I thought. And so I had to check that little desire to just run away. And this is just for me. I'm not putting anything on anyone else. But this was just in our situation. Like, all right, I got to man up. I got to man up and do we. Like, it's not about, oh, I have to escape and get away. No, this is way bigger than just me. And so as we talked around that was a big deal. That was a big shift in our marriage of realizing how serious it was. And just from that, I feel like we've found such a stability inside of how to go through hard situations that it's always arm in arm. And I ain't running. I ain't going. And I tell her that all the time. Just like Tim Hawk, if you go anywhere, I'm going with you. I will never, never leave you. And I've taken my little kids' faces in my hands and said, I will never, ever, ever leave your mama. Ever. And I just deposit that in their little hearts. That no matter how scary it gets, no matter how hard the world gets, no matter what even we deal with, I will always, always, always be with your mama. And just have made that deposit so it's not something they ever have to think about. It's not something they ever have to wrestle with or any kind of burden they carry. So those are some of those areas where it's gotten serious. Like, this is we. And we is always first before me. And so that's my challenge to you guys tonight, just like we've watched and heard, is fight for that we seat. Fight for the we seat, because that's where you're going to win. Anything else? That was powerful. What's my last one? Oh, yes. I did want to answer this question. How do you know if you should put your whole heart into Mercy Marriage? This question's around the lines of, I'm unsure if I believe my spouse is for me. And so if I don't know if my spouse is for me, how should I invest myself all the way into this? And then the second part of that question is, when do you know when to quit? Like, when is it time just to give in and go? And I'm just going to answer this from a scriptural perspective. The thing about finding someone who's not right for you, if there was a person that's right for us, then the Bible would have warned us about that. If you could find somebody who's not right for you, then the Bible would have warned you, hey, just so you know, there's going to be people who aren't right for you. And there's no warning in Scripture about that. There's no warnings that someone's not going to be right for you. And so it's very easy to get caught up in this lie. And I believe the enemy tells every one of this. I felt it on the day we were about to get married. What if I marry her and she's not the right one? And then what? Now I'm going to live with someone I'm not supposed to be with. Well, if that's the case, what if you got the wrong one? Now what do you do? Right? And so I know the enemy speaks that. But the Bible does mention this, that anybody can get along with each other if they'll operate in the fruit of the Spirit. And so I really don't mean to ruffle feathers, but I really, really believe this, that if your spouse could be wrong for you, then God would have cared enough to warn you of that, to say, hey, just so you know. But on the basis of that, when do you know when to quit? I would say this, that the right question, or another way to look at that question, is not is my spouse right for me, but is my spouse willing to work with me? Is my spouse working with me? Am I the one doing all the work and they won't do anything? Am I the one putting in all the work and they won't do anything? Is my spouse willing to work with me in this? And if they're not, then that's the place where you have to take that question up with the Lord and go, God, what do I do in this spot? Because if you're the only one working on that and nothing's coming back and you've had adult conversations with them and there is just nothing happening, then that's a place to take that up with the Lord and say, what do I do? What do I do with this? And let him answer that question. But it's not because they're the wrong one. It's just they're not willing to work with you in it. And I would also say this, that I'm trying to figure out how I want to frame this. I guess I'd say it like this, that if you can look in the mirror and know that you've done everything you possibly could, I've done everything I can possibly do to win. That's probably your place to start asking the Lord, is it time for me to go? Seriously. But I mean, you can honestly say, I have done everything I know to do, and my spouse is not willing to work with me. And so it's not, are they the wrong person? It's, are they willing to work with me or not? And that's a tough place to be in. And I just want to say this, that I've watched people struggle with a spouse who wants nothing to do with it. And God has created a miracle in that. And there is scripture in your Bible that talks about if you have a man that wants nothing to do with you and he's acting a fool, you can win him over. And so there's scriptures that talks about restoring that person and winning them back to you. And so there are miracles that can be done in that area. So I would caution you not to be quick to leave, but to be quick to have mercy and to continue to do everything you can do. Did you have something on that? You said something about the danger of a foot in or foot out. Would you mind sharing that? Do you remember that? Sorry to put you on the spot again, but.
Yeah, it was pretty much my own testimony. When I heard the question, it was just kind of like, if you got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you're already out of the marriage. And so how can you expect something to succeed or prosper when you already have a way out or you're already out of it? And so for me, that was kind of our own testimony. I was always 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I always had an exit plan. I always knew where I was going if this didn't work. And I realized that how is it going to grow? How is it going to prosper if my whole heart ain't in it? And even that, like you said, if you can look in the mirror and say that you've done everything that you possibly can, then maybe start asking that question. But even to that extent, it's like, is my entire heart in this thing?
Wow.
Because the way in which we view relationship, and again, this is where it's the Christian realm, because the way in which we view relationship is different from the world. Because while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So while my spouse wants absolutely nothing to do with me, while my spouse is the rudest person I know, while my spouse is the most vindictive person I know, my whole heart cries for them. Because their eternity is more important than my temporary right now. And so again, that's a hard question because of where we're at and what we believe. Like, I'm going to stick it out with my whole heart because he did it for me.
Wow.
And
That's
maybe
great.
the same miracle that happened on the cross will happen in my relationship or my marriage. And so
Wow.
it's a tough one. I wouldn't want to be in that situation, even though I was in that situation, but whole heart.
Yeah. Because if 1 foot's in and one's out, then you're always chipping away at faults.
Yeah.
Like, it's really easy to find faults in that place. That's a great question. And I thank you for bringing that up.
Tag on that real quick is like, when you look in the mirror, it's really easy to look in the mirror and say that you've done everything you absolutely can. But are you truly looking in the mirror and taking all pride, selfishness, everything out of it and telling yourself, yeah, you have done everything? Because I was in that position with my first marriage, and I didn't see my daughter from when she was 4 years old till after she was 21 years old. Some of it was me, a lot of it was me, and some of it was her mom. But I told myself the same thing. You know, I've looked for her. I've tried to find her. I've tried to be in her life. I've done everything I absolutely could. And then you come to the realization, doesn't matter if you think you've done, there's always something else you can do. And prayer is key in that. The first thing in that question that sparks in me is the word spouse. You know, you called them spouse. And there was a time when you got married to become spouse that there was a fire, blazing fire, that there was the love and the compassion that you had. And I would go back and just start looking at why you don't think there's that fire anymore. Because, you know, fire needs two things. Marriage needs two things. And so was there something in there that, are you really doing all that you absolutely can do,
Wow.
I guess.
Yeah, it worked when you were dating.
Yeah.
Right? It worked when you were dating, and so it will work again. A lot of times if we would just treat our marriages like we were dating, we'd be shocked at what would happen. Right? We'd be back at the fair trying to win him a teddy bear.
Wouldn't have his gray hair.
Yeah, you would.
I want to pray for you tonight with the elders of Lifeway Church, and I still thank you guys for being willing to be open, vulnerable. But it doesn't stop here. They didn't just come up here to share with you their stories. They came up here to let you know that they're for you. And these are people that you can come to and talk to. These are people you can get advice from. These are people you can talk about hard situations with and to. And they're here to see you win. And so I want you to know that they're here for you. And please take advantage of that. Don't just stay alone, and don't fight through things by yourself. Be daring enough to ask the question, because then God can give answers and get you on a good track. So would you guys mind grabbing hands? We just want to pray over these precious couples tonight and saints. I'm so proud of you guys for, 5 weeks now you've been investing into your marriages and your relationships. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let us pray for you one more time. Heavenly Father, we honor you so much for what you've done, what you've brought tonight, speaking through all of us tonight. And I thank you so much for all of the relationships that are represented here tonight. All of the singles, all of the relationships, all of the marriages, all of the households, all of the families. And God, we ask you to do something amazing through every seed that has been planted, through all of the wisdom that we've offered. God, I pray that you would take and that you would cause families and households to flourish. God, we give you an open door. We give you an invitation to come into our homes and cause your name to be known, cause your glory to be seen. Let your miracles take place. God, if there's relationships here tonight that are about to be over, that are strained and feel ruined and just done for, I ask that you would give one more glimmer of hope, one more opportunity of life to be breathed into that place. And God, we truly ask you to do something great with our marriages and let them represent you. Let them inspire people around us. Let them be a ministry, God. We thank you so much in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you, elders. I appreciate you. Would you give them a hand tonight for being so transparent? Wow. Good job. Thank you, guys. Have an awesome night. Thank you so much for being here tonight.